Our lunchtime session, the Mealtime Madness Breakthrough. In this session, you will learn how to create fun, motivating, and stress-free mealtime routine for your child and you as a family, as well as incorporate language skills into mealtimes. Our speakers, Maddie Trigg and Meredith Wooley, are both leading speech language pathologists and both are specialized in feeding therapy. And we are so proud that they're part of the Warren Center team. I'm going to turn it over to you, Meredith and Maddie. The floor is yours.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our presentation. Um, I'm Meredith Wooley, and I'm a speech therapist at the Warren Center. And I'm Maddie Trigg, and I'm also a speech therapist at the Warren Center. Meredith and I both work on the same team, and we both work with children who have feeding delays as well as language delays. So today, like Amy mentioned, we will be working on mealtime routines, as well as using language strategies. So we're going to start off our presentation with a fun little video that we found while we were doing our own research. This book is a great book you could find on Amazon, or you could pull up this video and watch it with your children to prepare for mealtime. We also know that mealtime can be somewhat stressful sometimes. So we thought this video was really fun and cute, and hope that it brings a smile to your face and can get you ready for talking about mealtime routines. We'll just give us a second while we pull up the video.
Everyone, welcome back to my channel, and today we are going to meet Qualisi again, but we're going to read Mealtime as well. Hi everyone, welcome back to our channel. Let's start reading. Mealtime. Little boy. Mealtime, yummy in the tummy time. Clean hands for you and me. Look and see. Plate, cup, spoon, napkin, ready to dig in. Some for me and some for you. Don't forget a thank you. Thank you. Rainbow. We eat our fruits and veggies to grow up strong and healthy. One big rule for mealtime, always try one bite. You just might like it. Want more? Say more, please, and then thank you once again. At the table, try to sit still until all done. Hello, napkin. Wipe, all clean. I have this plant. You ate, that's great. Time to clear your plate. I have this plant and it's called Peace Lily. I have it in my bedroom. Mealtime's done. Time for more fun. Cute little squirrel. Okay, this is mealtime objects, mealtime tips for parents and caregivers. Bye everyone, hope you liked this video and subscribe to my channel, but I'm going to read the back to you. So, yummy in the tummy time. It's fun and healthy mealtime. Dig in, eat those fruits and veggies, taste.
All right, so that was a little video, just like Meredith said, to get you in the mood for meal.
Toddler Tools series.
Enjoyed it.
Toddler Tools. That time, bye-bye time, calm down.
Give us a second, please. There we go. So as Angelica showed you, there are lots of different words that you can use with meals. And you can also build lots of routines into your meal times as well. So let's focus a little bit more on mealtime structure and what we mean by a meal. So how do we define a meal? Well, a meal is just any time that your child interacts with food or eats food. It doesn't mean that they have to finish their entire plate, and it also doesn't mean that they have to eat. Even if it's just them touching the food and bringing it up to their mouth, we would consider that a meal. So to begin, we always like to outline how many meals you should have per day. You should have 5 meals: breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, and dinner. So in general, we recommend these 5 because it gives you enough opportunities to present lots of food options, and it also prevents grazing throughout the day. One of our number 1 recommendations is to not let your child graze throughout the day. A lot of those foods that your children will graze on are oftentimes foods that you would give in a snack time, like goldfish, Doritos, grapes, all those little filler foods that can be great, but can also make your child not want to eat during those more main courses like breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So during snacks, this is an opportunity for your child to use food exploration so they can interact with the food. This is where you get to play with it. And we'll go into more details on that later. But the snack time is not necessarily a time where you're worried about volume of how much food your child is getting. The meals, which are the breakfast, the lunch, and the dinner time meals, are more for those times where your child would be eating higher volumes or more amounts of food. So as you can see, 5 meals are best: breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, and dinner. Over the next few slides, we're going to talk about where your child should be eating, how they should be sitting, and what role you can play in your child's mealtime. So we want to take a poll to see where your kids are sitting during mealtime and want to know what's typical for you before we get started talking about where we recommend kids are going to be sitting. So Amy, if you want to go ahead and start that poll, we'll give you a few minutes or seconds.
We're going to give it a few more minutes to make sure everybody can get a chance to answer. We've got several. I think we're done with that. So here, and we'll end polling and share the results.
Okay, so a lot of people in high chairs. That's great. We've got a little bit of everything too. So awesome. We will go ahead and move on to the next slide. Okay, so whenever we're talking about meal times, one of the first things we talk about is where we're going to sit. So we have some examples on the screen. We have some different high chairs and some booster seats. We recommend for every mealtime that kids have a very consistent place to sit. This helps them know what's coming next. It helps them have a routine that is consistent so that they can learn when mealtime is going to occur, and they have a designated place to sit. As you notice, all of these places have a surface in front of them, so that we can put our food right there in front of our kiddos so that they can touch it and get their hands in it we always want food right there so they can reach it. So it's important to always have a consistent place for them to sit and a surface in front of it. It can also be really helpful, like a lot of the examples we have, to have something that has buckles or straps. We know toddlers are active, they like to move, so it's really difficult sometimes to get them seated. So have some straps to help with that as well. All right, we'll move on to the next slide. So as we talked about, it's great to have a specific location to eat for your child. So they know every single mealtime happens at this one dedicated spot. We want to explain why this is important. And one of the biggest reasons why is because of positioning. So we have a few examples on our slide here of two different kiddos in a high chair, because you may think, oh, I got a high chair or I got a booster seat, I'm in the clear, I've got the right seating mechanism, but you never know. So look at our friend here on the left. So you can see that his shoulders are behind his hips and he is leaning back a little bit. Also, his feet are not touching the footrest. In fact, he's got one foot propped up against the edge of his tray to give himself extra support and stability. His knees are also not at a 90-degree angle. They are more at a 45-degree angle and they are pushed out. Now, let's look at the kid on the right. So you can see quite a bit of differences. I think it's a girl. Her hips are positioned at that 90-degree angle. Her knees are also at the 90-degree angle. Her feet are firmly planted on the step stool, and her neck and chin are also at that 90-degree angle. So this little girl has a lot of support and a lot of stability so that she can do her mealtime routine easily. So let's talk a little bit more about what you're looking for. When the mealtime routine is happening, you're looking for pelvic stability, which is just a big word for hips. So you want their hips to be secure and in that 90-degree angle, just like we see with our friend on the right. You also want trunk control, which is again, just another fancy word for your core, your abs, your belly, whatever you want to call it. So you want that to be nice and secure so your baby isn't wiggling around, trying to move or slide out of the high chair. We also want head control so that your kid is not looking around, having their head lean back, or tucking their chin down like this. And all of those things that are happening at once allow for jaw stability as well as tongue control and lip mobility. So again, those are just fancy words for the strength and control of your mouth follows the strength and control of your body. So we want to make sure that baby's body is secure and stable so that their mouths are also secure and stable. We can also provide modifications for their positioning so that they're in this 90-90-90 positioning. So ways that you can do this is by adding extra padding or cushion behind your child on their lower back or under their knees so that their knees are at that 90-degree angle. You could also bring in books or an empty big box from Amazon or wherever so that your child has their own footrest. So don't feel like you need to go out and buy the most expensive high chair on the market, because you can usually create your own support and stability with lots of things that you have around your house. Just try to remember the rules of 90, 90, 90 and play with different materials to see how you can get your child in that position. All right, so now we're going to talk about what your role as the parent is during meal times. So we're going to talk about using a family style meal time at least once a day, every day. So when we say family style, what we mean is that, first of all, the family is together. Maybe you're not able to get everyone together for every meal, but we want at least one adult sitting down having a meal with the child. We also are going to serve the food in family style. So that means having some bowls or serving platters in the middle of the table with food in them that you will serve one at a time and pass around the table. You can also have different size utensils, a big spoon, a little spoon, so that your kids can decide how much they want on their plate. This gives them a little bit of control so that hopefully that mealtime isn't as overwhelming for them, especially if this is a difficult time of the day. We also want you all at the table together because kids learn from watching us. So if they are always eating by themselves, how are they going to learn to pick up a spoon and feed themselves, or take really good bites and chew hard on their food if they don't see you do it first? So we love when families can eat together because kids learn from watching us. This will help them in their meal times. This can also make meals really fun. Sometimes when we sit down with our kiddos at the table and they're the only ones eating and the focus is all on them, that can create a lot of stress and be really, really hard for kids sometimes. So if we have the whole family there, we're all talking and laughing and it's fun, that's a great way to get kids excited about meal times and have those meals become a positive part of the day and not a negative part of the day. It also provides a lot of opportunity for socialization, and kids are way more likely to try something new when they're at the table and say their siblings tried a bite of something or dad really likes this food. Again, if they see us eating, they'll be way more likely to try it themselves. So we really encourage that, like I said, at least once a day. We know that may not be possible for every family to get everyone together, but at least try to have one adult at the table eating at the same time as your child and serving the food in that way so they have a bit of control. So far we've learned about positioning and where we're going to eat, and we've talked about the mealtime routine and eating as a family. So now we're going to move into talking about strategies to use for feeding, as well as strategies to use during meal times to work on language skills and help build vocabulary into those routines. So we know all those strategies at once can be kind of overwhelming. So you'll see that we've broken it up by our 5 meal times. So we're going to talk about one specific strategy for each of those meal times, each of those 5 meal times we talked about earlier.
All right, to start us off, we are beginning with breakfast. So as Meredith just said, we always want to encourage at least one parent to be sitting and eating with your child, if possible, for at least some of the meal time. So during breakfast time, we are going to focus on a specific language strategy called verbal modeling. So what does that mean? What is verbal modeling? Verbal modeling is when you narrate actions or you talk about objects. So narrating actions could be using words like eat, drink,
You could build in sounds like yum yum or mmm while your kid is eating. You can also talk about specific foods your child might be eating. You could tell them they're eating strawberries in this picture or cereal. You could also talk about the description of the food and the food's characteristics. Like cereal is crunchy. So you could say, ooh, crunchy cereal while you're eating, or just the word crunchy. You could use words like soft, salty, hot, or cold. These are all good words that you can build in while your child is eating. As far as our mealtime strategy focused on feeding, we recommend that during your meals, especially during breakfast, lunch, and dinner, that you offer at least one preferred food. So what do we mean by a preferred food? That just simply means a food that you know your kid will almost always eat. So this is a food that they like, they've eaten it across many meals, and it's a good go-to. And then instead of pressuring your kid to eat by using words like, take a bite of your egg, or don't you want to eat this strawberry? We also recommend that you try and use more encouraging language like, my strawberry is sweet, or wow, your cereal sounds so crunchy, so that your kid doesn't feel pressured. They will actually be more likely to try the food this way, because we all know that a toddler's favorite word is no. So try and avoid those, do you want to do this? Or take a bite of this. Your answer will probably be no. Instead, tell them what you are going to do or what you are enjoying about the food. So that covers breakfast. Next, we're going to move on to snacks. So during snack time, we are going to focus on food play and using animation. So food play is basically what it sounds like. It means playing in your food. I know a lot of us have always heard the phrase, don't play in your food. And if that's something that you have thought about a lot when eating with your kids, I want you to throw that out the window and completely forget about it. Food play is a good thing, and it's age appropriate and good for our kids, especially if they are really picky eaters and they aren't interested in a big variety of food. Food play is a great way to get kids get their hands dirty, touch and explore foods so that they are more comfortable with that food. If your child is not comfortable touching food, then it's going to be really, really difficult for them to want to put that food in their mouth and eat it. So we have to start with our hands. So some good examples of food play might be kind of like this picture, getting our yogurt on our hands and our fingers and maybe painting circles on their tray, or taking a food and driving it like a car across the tray, or even kissing foods or making a mustache out of a piece of pasta or a veggie straw, something like that. So when we are doing that food play, we want to make sure that we are being animated. Animation just means being silly, being over the top, exaggerating your sound, your voice, your gestures, and making things really, really fun. So when we're doing food play, make it fun. Be silly. That is helpful for our kids. If they're having fun, they're thinking more about that and less about the pressure to eat that food. And when they feel relaxed and in control, they're more likely to try something new. We can also use animation when modeling language for our kids. Maddie just talked about modeling words, and it's great to use animation when you're modeling those words as well. That way our kids are more interested in what we're saying and they're more attentive to what we're saying as well. So that is, those are some strategies you can focus on during your first snack time of the day. And I'm gonna let Maddie talk about lunch.
All right, so like we mentioned at the beginning, remember, snack is a time for exploration and play. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner are times where you worry more about your child eating higher amounts of food. So during lunch, a great strategy to not only work in language, but also to work in a feeding strategy that will help increase the amount your child will eat is to offer choices. So from a language perspective, you can offer these choices both verbally, so with words, and visually, as in holding up the object. You always want to give 2 choices or options that are appropriate and that you feel comfortable with. So don't offer your kid cookies or broccoli if you don't want them to eat cookies. Instead, try something like broccoli or carrots if your goal is really to get them to eat a vegetable. This is great because it also teaches your child to pair a word that they hear with an object that they see. So your child will be learning more and more vocabulary words during their mealtime routine, and hopefully will be able to use these words later to tell you what they want. In order to give your child more independence during their meal, choices can also help them gain independence and be more engaged in the meal. So here are some ways that you can use choices. You can offer a big scoop or a little scoop. You could even give your child the opportunity to scoop out how much they want so that they can work on some motor skills as well as have that independence. You can do this by simply getting a big serving spoon or a soup spoon versus a normal spoon that you and I would use to eat something like ice cream or yogurt. You can also talk about different colors during your lunch. On this plate, we've got colors like green, orange, and beige. So you also have a red truck on the plate. So you can talk about what colors you see. You could also use some stencils to cut out different shapes of food. On our slide, you can see we've got circle, a flower, a star, and a butterfly. You could even build in a choice. What type of sandwich do you want today? A circle sandwich or a star sandwich? This gets your kid involved in the meal and gets them more excited about eating their food. You can also give choices with simple things like their cups or their spoons. Which color cup do you want? Blue or green? Same thing with the spoons. As I said, this really helps your child get excited about meals and will also help build their vocabulary.
So at our next snack, we can use a strategy we call food chaining. Food chaining is something that we use when we are trying to introduce a new food. So instead of just taking a random food that we think we want our kids to eat, we're going to start with a food that they like. We want to choose something that they prefer and go from there. Once we have that food that they like, we're going to look at all the qualities of that food and change only one thing. So the qualities that we are talking about here are color, temperature, texture, flavor, and shape. So we'll take our food that kids like, change one quality of that food and go from there. So we're going to use the example of goldfish, and we have another question for the audience. So Amy's going to pull up our question. It's a very easy multiple choice question that you guys can answer for us regarding the properties of goldfish.
So again, we want you to decide with goldfish, what's the color, what's the temperature, the texture, the flavor, and the shape.
This one should be pretty easy.
We still have people voting, so I'm gonna give them a little bit more time.
Okay.
Okay, seems like we slowed down. So here are your answers.
All right. So looks like pretty much everybody went for orange, room temperature, crunchy, salty, and small. So that is right. So you're probably wondering, why are these two crazy ladies making us talk about the properties of food? Why does this matter? Well, we're going to go into more detail on the next slide. All right. So food chaining is important because it helps us understand the qualities of our food and then what little changes we can make to the foods they already like so that we can ultimately create a new food. So based on our pictures, you might be wondering, how would you go from my kid only eats applesauce to, oh, now they're going to eat slices of apple, or my kid only likes Chick-fil-A nuggets to now they're going to eat a grilled chicken breast. So it can seem a little bit overwhelming. What you do is you always start by thinking about the qualities of the food that you have. So let's take applesauce, for example, and go back to our different qualities of the food. So the color of applesauce is, I would say, yellow-brown. The temperature is probably either room temperature or cold, depending on where you store it. The texture is puree. The flavor is sweet. And the shape would just be non-ambiguous or just in a bowl or on a spoon, however you might want to present it. So once you know the qualities of your food, you work on just changing one of those qualities as you move up your food chain to gradually work towards apples. So you start with applesauce. Next, you might only want to change the texture a little bit. So you would move to steamed whole apples that are mashed up and mixed in with applesauce. So now all of your qualities, the color, the temperature, and the flavor and the shape are still the same, but your texture is now a lumpy puree. Then you might move up to just the steamed mashed apples. So you take out the applesauce. So again, you're just changing a little bit. So now your texture is a little bit more lumpy and more like whole apples. Then you would move to steamed whole apples that aren't smashed. You're only changing the texture again, and now you're changing the shape. So the child's apple is now in the shape of an apple slice, and the texture is still softer, but it's not smashed to be in a puree form. Eventually, then you would move to traditional apple slices that you would just cut up on your own. Now, this can seem a little bit complicated and a little overwhelming, but what we want to encourage you to do is just to focus on changing those one qualities at a time, and also making sure that your child is consistently accepting that new level that you move to across at least 3 or so days before you move to the next one. So I'll do chicken nuggets quickly. You would move from a chicken nugget to then a different brand of chicken nuggets. Then maybe you try chicken patties that you still make at your house. Then you might try your own homemade breaded chicken to then gradually get to full chicken breast. So as I said, you might have to present one level of the food chain several times before they're ready to move on to the next. But this is a great way for you to gradually get your child to add in more foods into their diet.
So for the last meal of the day, dinner, we are going to talk about a language strategy called expansion. So what that means is if your child says one word to ask for something during a meal or to comment on the food, you're going to repeat exactly what they say and add one more word to it, add something else. So we have the example on the screen where this little girl says cheese when she wants some more cheese, and the mom repeats it back to her and adds in there more cheese. You want more cheese. I would also really work on emphasizing those new words that you add. This is a great way to model some simple phrases at mealtime and expand on the vocabulary that kids already are using. If they aren't using many words right now, that's okay. We can stick to modeling single words and really emphasizing the most important words, names of foods, and the actions that you're doing while you're eating.
Okay, so that wraps up most of our presentation where we went through each meal as well as your snacks. We do have some resources that we found helpful and some of our parents have enjoyed. These are websites you can just Google on your own, such as The Bump, Feeding Littles, or mymunchbug.com. These all have different resources for you in terms of ideas of foods you can present, as well as more feeding strategies. So we're so thankful that you joined us for our Mealtime Madness presentation. We'll turn it over to Amy if there are any questions.
So one question I've got is, what about if a child starts throwing food? You know, they're sitting in their chair and they just pick it up and they throw it. I mean, how do you get them to stop throwing their food?
That's a great question because we know all kids love to throw things off the side of their tray. What we would recommend is to honestly not make a big deal out of it and just ignore it, because your kid is most likely doing it for attention. The other option, if your kid is a little bit older, is to have something called an all done bowl. So this is where you just take a bowl or an extra plate and put it on the corner of their tray. And when they start to throw their food off the side of the tray, you help them by moving their hand to then put it in their all done bowl or their plate, so that the child learns that they can put food there that they're not interested in, rather than throwing it on the floor for you to have to clean up.
Another question is, what if my child will not keep the food in their plate or bowl?
So this is one reason that we really like to have the tray there in front of us on our high chair or have a booster seat up to the table. It is okay to have food on the table or on the tray, especially because toddlers are messy. So I think having a tray for the high chair can be really helpful because that can be an easy cleanup. It's okay if they get messy. So use that tray. And then if they are, swiping food all the way off the table onto the ground, you can use those strategies Maddie talked about if kids start throwing food. But I would say for now, it's okay for them to get a little bit messy. Again, that's why we like to have that surface right in front of them with their high chair or booster seat pushed up to that tray or that table, so they have that space to explore the food.
We always say that enjoyment and playing with the food and eating comes before manners. So don't worry about manners right now.
The next question is, what can I do when my toddler does not show any interest in food?
That's a great opportunity to build in the strategy that Meredith talked about today, which is the food play. If your toddler is not interested in food, they probably just have never really experienced it. So we would encourage you to use those strategies like animation and start with something such as painting with purees with your fingers or creating food stamps. The more silly you can be and the more fun and animated you are, the more likely that your toddler will actually copy you and end up bringing something up to their mouth. That would be the first step I would recommend.
And I would
Next
say, I
question.
think, oh, go ahead, Amy.
No, if you have some more, I got a couple more questions.
I would just say, focus on fun and not them eating it in order to get them more interested.
What if your child tantrums if food even gets on them and will only eat junk food?
That's a really good question. So I would say never force them to touch anything or to eat anything. There may be a reason, maybe they don't like those textures and they're not used to it. So let kids explore it on their own and focus on just giving them that opportunity. And I would say with them always wanting to eat junk food, try to offer a balance in the choices that you give them. So always try to offer at least one food in a meal you know they will eat, and then offer some other options. Maybe they don't eat the broccoli and they only eat the Doritos at a meal, but hopefully they have the opportunity to play with the broccoli and explore it and get a little bit closer to trying to put that food in their mouth.
You could also bring some of those foods that they tantrum with outside of the mealtime and bring it in a more play setting, like letting them play with a puree in the bathtub for easy cleanup, or getting a big empty Tupperware container and letting them touch the food outside on your porch. So that way the child doesn't feel pressured to eat because they're not in their high chair, but instead they see it as a play opportunity. Sometimes that can help.
Is there any other questions before we end? Does it look like we're good? I just want to take a second. Well, I want to thank you ladies for the great information, and we appreciate you being part of this event. We know that everyone has benefited from what you've had to say, so I greatly appreciate it.